What's going on, everyone? Tayler Kyles and Mike Kadlick here for CLNS Media, coming at you with another episode of Pat's Daily, brought to you by our good friends at Prize Picks and Game Time. Our position preview shows continue. Today, we will be diving into the safety position, one of the position groups where, one, you already know what the starting position looks like. You got to feel pretty confident. Bill Belichick said himself that Jabril Peppers and Kyle Duggar are two of the better players at their position. And you've also got some young upside in Marte Mapu and another guy in Jaylen Hawkins who made an impression during spring practices. So, Mike, this is a series that you have been writing about on the website, doing a great job. Let the people know what you think of in terms of the overview at this spot before we get into some fun stuff like sleepers and surprise cuts, all that good stuff.
Yeah, it's I think arguably their best position group on the roster. Like you mentioned, they have two guys in Duggar and Peppers who Duggar gets his big extension this summer or this spring rather. He gets transition tagged and then they give him the 4-year, $58 million contract and go up to $66 million total in maximum value. So a guy who they clearly like in the back end of that defense on the roster. And then Jabril Peppers next to him, who started slow in the NFL, was a first-round pick, was a part of that Odell Beckham deal. I know you remember, but if you guys don't remember, he was traded from Cleveland to the Giants in that Odell deal, and then was hurt really for a majority of his time in New York. Tore his ACL in his last season, and then comes here and, despite a little slow of a start coming in with the Patriots from that knee injury, has been awesome for them for the last two seasons. So again, last year for him started 15 of 17 games, 78 tackles, 5 TFLs, a sack, 8 pass deflections, 2 picks. Like, he does it all. Like, he's all over the place as the free safety, as a free rainer, but also kind of can play in the box too. So they have the position locked down with those guys. And then they also have Marte Mapu, who you mentioned, who's third-round pick last year. He's that hybrid linebacker safety. Where are you on Mapu? You want him to play more linebacker? You want him to play more safety, Taylor?
I think he's going to play everywhere, honestly.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing with him. Everyone wants to put him into a box. And it's like, have you watched this Patriots defense? Right. Nobody plays in one spot for the most part. So, yeah, I think Mapu's going to take over for Mac Wilson and get a lot of his reps as that dime linebacker. But Mayo kind of also acknowledged that he is an undersized linebacker. You don't really want him on the field on early downs. If you watch his tape when he's like actually playing early down linebacker in their big nickel, doesn't look great. But I think he's more of that like big slot corner, big safety type, where, again, his coverage ability and his fluidity comes in handy in the box, but someone who's going to definitely line up a little bit everywhere.
Yeah, we'll get into more of him later on in the episode here, but then the room is obviously rounded out, as you know. Josh Bledsoe is a guy who's been on again, off again. The practice squad has made the team a couple times through camp and then has kind of fizzled out. And then Del Pettis out of Troy was their UDFA. So Jaylen Hawkins obviously there too. We'll get to him, somebody who has come in, kind of taken over the free safety position a little bit alongside Peppers. So that could make for an interesting battle in camp. But yeah, again, a position group where they're really strong. I think it probably is their best position group on the team. So that's kind of the overview of the safety group for the Pats.
Yeah, and Jabril Peppers too. I want to put a spotlight on him because there's been a lot of talk about the Patriots needing a free safety, which to a degree I understand, just because you want Duggar and Peppers to be used near the line of scrimmage as often as possible. Like in his Peppers first season, when it was really Adrian Phillips and Kyle Duggar, he was more of a big nickel slot corner, which is an area that he thrived in last season as well, because he's so physical and such a good blitzer. He just blows up plays. But they didn't really use him on the back end very much. He was more like sometimes they'd have him cover running backs. Even against the Bills in some coverage schemes, he would actually be out at cornerback so he could kind of jam receivers before releasing them into deep coverage. But last season, we saw him actually make plays as a free safety on the ball, covering up for other people at times, like a cerebral player with good range. So when it comes to some of their really pass-oriented groupings, like against the run, keep them near the box 100%. But when you do know passes coming like in their dime packages and stuff like that, I like him as their go-to free safety because of his intelligence and his range. So just wanted to put that out there. I feel like he doesn't get enough credit for the work he's done at free safety. But moving on, let's get into the good stuff. Let's talk about sleepers. Who is not getting enough attention from this position group?
I still think it's Marte Mapu. I think he's a guy who, again, I mentioned it before, a third-round pick last year, played a ton in the first couple weeks, and then his playtime kind of fizzled out as the season went on. I wrote about this a little bit on CLNSmedia.com, but at one point, he played just 7 snaps over 3 games. Like, he really kind of he shined early. He obviously had that great camp. Even when he was in his red jersey to start, he was like making plays all over the place. And everyone's like, who the heck is this guy? And he kind of didn't have a great rookie season. He showed flashes, though. I mean, I put both clips in my article if you want to go check it out. But there was one play, and not oddly enough, but there's one of the great plays, he's playing safety, and the other one he's playing linebacker. So don't box this guy in. Let him play everywhere. But there's one where he's playing safety. They roll the coverage one side. They throw the ball back the other way, and he comes all the way across formation and makes the tackle on his own. So, like, he can, dissect and understand what's going on and be quick to make a play. And then the other one was that linebacker on the interception off Patrick Mahomes in week 14 or 15. I forget when it was. So, if he can play linebacker and intercept Patrick Mahomes and then play safety, come back opposite a role and make the play, that there's some potential there. So I think now into his second year, you're going to want to get the third round pick more run. We'll see what happens with, that free safety position and how they kind of want to move Kyle Duggar and Jabril Peppers around. But Marte Mapu is going to compete for that third safety spot, which I know we'll get into on Patriots Press Pass here when we get into our position previews or position battles rather on the channel. So I think, yes, we have a lot of expectations for Mapu, but I think we're sleeping on him because I think he really can take that next step and be a truly an impactful player and get a lot more reps and play a lot more this season than he did last year.
100%. And, I understand why people may be down on him. He did have some very real coverage busts. Like I mentioned, Peppers having to cover up for some people. I think it was against the Commanders where Mapu completely blew his coverage and Peppers was fired up after. He's like, where the hell were you? That was your guy. And that's to be understood. First of all, he walked into the defense, at least in week one and throughout, as their third safety over Adrian Phillips and Jalen Mills. They put a ton on his plate. Like against the Dolphins, he's playing linebacker, slot corner, free safety, strong safety.
I was looking back at the Dolphins game, and at one point when they were using their, that free safety umbrella for Tyreek Hill, Marte Mapu was one of those guys, like a rookie playing in week 2 against Tyreek Hill. Like they relied on him a lot early, and I think that kind of went into, him ultimately trickling down the stretch.
Yeah, because it's just not easy to be a rookie in the Patriots defense, much less a safety where at least Christian Gonzalez, it's like, sometimes you're in the slot, sometimes you're outside. Yeah. Mapu could literally be playing one of like 4 or 5 different positions. But like you mentioned, like that interception against Mahomes was crazy. One, he baited Mahomes because he was like in position, just knew that the tight end was going to sit. You can see him just like, is he going to throw this? Is he going to throw this?
Yeah.
Then gets downhill and rips it away from the tight end. Like that is a really impressive effort. He also forced a fumble against the Broncos that ended up turning into a touchdown on special teams. And actually the interception, I saw something similar against the Cowboys. It didn't work out because the pass ended up getting batted and Dak Prescott made a better throw before it was batted. But it was the same thing where he saw a tight end running a curl route and he just sat on it and waited. And that instinct, like he was a ball hawk in college at Sacramento, and obviously different level of competition, but he has the athleticism where it can translate. Once the game slows down, like you said, I agree. I think he's going to be somebody who turns into a legitimate impact player for this defense, especially down the stretch. Expect him to be more in like that tight end eraser kind of mold, and we'll see what else happens. But the reason I'm curious how much run he's going to get this year is because the guy that I have as a sleeper in Jaylen Hawkins. Now, this is someone who I was also sleeping on when he was signed. I thought he was really more of just a special teams guy because that's primarily what he was for the Chargers. But going back to when he was with the Falcons, he actually played under Dean Pease, who was Gerard Mayo's defensive coordinator his first 2 seasons in the league. And guess who Jaylen Hawkins took over for at free safety in Atlanta? Deron Harmon.
Oh, yeah.
So it's kind of like a glove there. One, Dean Pease runs a pretty complex, like multiple type of defensive structures. So one, Hawkins has played a lot of free safety, but he's also played a lot of other techniques. You saw him make a lot of, passes defended, some interceptions when he was in split field coverages, which the Patriots like their single high, but they'll play a lot of cover 2 as kind of a switch up. They love to disguise cover 1 and then roll into cover 2 to confuse quarterbacks. But also, I do think that Hawkins, in terms of being a tackler, could be more consistent. He was a pretty solid last line of defense. Not going to make a lot of plays, I don't think, from center field, but he has enough range, kind of on the smaller side, so bigger receivers can kind of run over or stiff arm him. But this is a defense where they put so much stock into tackling. We saw Jalen Mills wildly inconsistent during his time with Philly. he comes here and really kind of gets under more control. So I think that Jaylen Hawkins is a guy who, in some of their maybe 3 safety packages and nickel against the run, he can be that free safety. So Kyle Duggar can be your linebacker, and Jabril Peppers can kind of be more of your slot cornerback, and you can really use everybody to where they are at their most efficient. So Mapu's a close one here, but I have Hawkins because I really do think he carved out a role, despite being someone that no one really expected to do much when he was originally signed.
Yeah, I think it makes a ton of sense. We'll get into Hawkins. I have him listed later on, so I'll leave my eval for number 32 once we get there.
Before we get into that, quick word from our friends over at Prize Picks. Be right back. You can win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000. With the NBA Finals over, the hoops action doesn't stop on Prize Picks. Women's basketball is just heating up, with stars like Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese looking to make names for themselves, alongside greats like Breanna Stewart and Asia Wilson. You can earn up to 100 times your cash watching them ball out. Prize Picks is available in more than 30 states across the country, including California, Texas, and Georgia. I made my first $10 deposit and received an instant $10 bonus. If you have the skills, you can play for a shot at turning your $10 into $1,000. I've got Caitlin Clark for more than 3.5 3-points made and Breanna Stewart for more than 23 points. For baseball, I've got Kyle Schwarber for more than 9-hitter fantasy score and Bryce Miller for more than 4 pitcher strikeouts. Download the app today and use the code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. All right, buddy. So the next 2 categories are not easy for a position like safety, where there's a pretty clear divide and, who's going to play, what guys' values are. But who do you have as a surprise cut among this group?
Yeah, you mentioned it's kind of tough here. So this one might be a little bit of a stretch, but it makes sense, and I could kind of morph it into what I thought. And it's Jaylen Hawkins, who you just mentioned, who came in as someone who you thought, could be a roster bubble guy, might have to really fight for his position, and he is. But he had a hell of a spring. He had a great camp, playing a ton of free safety, cementing himself as really one of their top guys in that sort of rotation of 3 safeties, and playing a ton of free safety and playing it well. But I look at his standing on the roster as more to be determined by how much more comfortable Peppers continues to get at free safety, and also how much Marte Mapu can emerge. Because if they can fill that gap with Mapu, who's a young guy, and they want to put him and play him there a lot more, and Peppers can, really hold it down and be that guy, and you don't have to worry about kind of, bringing in a third guy. I think Mapu can beat out Hawkins for the 3rd safety spot, and then you can have, whether it be Marcellus Dial as sort of a hybrid guy there. Brendan Schooler can be sort of the backup. I know we'll talk about him in our special teams preview, but I just think that, look, Hawkins had a really solid camp, but I think if you want to rely more on Peppers, and I think if Mapu can continue to be that guy, unless Hawkins, and you mentioned Hawkins is a special teamer, and he can kind of bring that too, but if other players can beat him out and be the special teamer, I just think that Hawkins can kind of be in no man's land. Even if he plays well, they might want to cut him off the roster for somebody else if they can rely, again, on Mapu to really emerge as that 3rd safety.
Yeah, I agree.
And I get you're not going to see it, and it doesn't make sense. And I think he's going to make the team. We'll get to our roster projection later. I think he'll be there. But if I had to choose somebody, that's the only surprise, because I don't see Bledsoe making the team. Del Pettis isn't going to make the team, and they're not going to cut Duggar, Mapu, or Jabril Peppers. So Jaylen Hawkins turns out to be that guy.
Jaylen Hawkins is really the only option here for any sort of a surprise. Right. Yeah, no, I 100% agree. The only reason I think it won't happen, and again, we agree, he's probably making the team. Because one, they lost Miles Bryant. I think that was they lost Miles Bryant, Jalen Mills, and Adrian Phillips. Now, when they started to have safety depth issues because Jabril Peppers got hurt late in the season, we started to see a little bit of Miles Bryant at free safety. Jalen Mills' snaps started to go up. We even saw a little bit more of Adrian Phillips, who at that point was pretty much only a special teamer. So I do think you still need depth at that spot, especially because they use so many 3 safety packages. Literally, if one guy goes down, that causes a domino effect. Yep. So that's the reason I don't think it's very likely. But at the same time, like we said, we know who's going to be playing on this team and who's going to have some kind of role. And the guys who aren't, it's like, yeah, of course not. So with that being said, let's get into potential trade candidates.
This was going to be a quick one, Taylor, because this is a cop-out. They're not going to trade anybody. And it's the same as they're not going to make a surprise cut. Hawkins fits the bill for that, but there isn't even – Hawkins fits the bill for the surprise cut. Nobody fits it for the trade candidate. Like, there's not – you're not going to trade Marte Mapu. You're obviously okay, maybe you could say Peppers because he's in a contract year, right? Like, okay, he's playing on his last year, so maybe you can get something for him. He's a part of their plans. He's going to be here long-term. And Kyle Duggar just got lucked up. And there's no value in Josh Bledsoe. There's no value in Del Pettis. So there's no trade candidate. There's really no surprise cut. To go back to the Hawkins thing, it makes sense. But if you cut him, it's because Bledsoe has an extraordinary camp, which he's done for the last 3 years, made the team, and hasn't really played. So long story short, they're not going to trade anybody. I don't know if you can, make an argument for somebody, but I couldn't even do it, so I didn't even put it in the article. I just said there's no trade candidate. First cop-out of the Patriots depth projection series this summer.
I'd rather people get mad at us for having a cop-out and not putting someone than putting someone who makes absolutely no sense.
Exactly.
Because, like you said, Kyle Duggar just signed a big deal. He's staying around. Jabril Peppers, I think, is more likely to get extended than he is to get 100%. Traded. I think in our last video where we talked about potential extension candidates with Tavai's breakdown, I think I said that Peppers is younger than Duggar. I don't think he's younger, but they're about the same age. I think they're both 28 years old. Like, there's not a huge divide there. And Peppers, again, the fact that he is probably in some of the best shape that he's been in as a player. Obviously, not necessarily when he was 22, but at this stage of his career, considering how much smarter he is and his instincts have really hit a different level, I think he's still going to be good for at least a couple of years. So I could see him getting something like a 2-year extension kind of deal. Maybe give him a little bit more money up front. And then you said Joshua Bledsoe has been cut before. Even Jaylen Hawkins was cut from the Falcons, then picked up by the Chargers. And Del Pettis is a long shot to have any kind of role on the team or the practice squad. So sorry, y'all.
Nothing there. Yeah,
it's not like offensive line where there's just so many bodies. There's not that many safeties on the roster, even though they're very valuable.
We'll run into this problem. I'm sure we'll run into this problem next or later in the week as well when we touch on the running backs because spoiler alert, there's not a big room and there's not many trade candidates there either. So
yeah, but we will do a breakdown on who we think is going to be in and out. We've already kind of previewed that, but we'll just reiterate and wrap things up. But first, quick words from our friends at Game Time. Be right back.
Nothing says summer quite like a live baseball game. And whenever I want to check out a Red Sox game at Fenway, I'm using Game Time, the best place for last-minute deals on tickets. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace for Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. With Game Time, it's as easy as finding the game you want to attend, getting a view of the entire stadium to see what prices look like in different areas, and they actually do you a favor and show you both the cheapest tickets available and the best deals. You can also get the view from the seat that you picked, and between their lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, and job loss protection, there's really no better option than Game Time. And with Game Time's lowest price guarantee, the app will actually credit you 110% of the difference if you find a cheaper ticket elsewhere. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
All right, bud, let's wrap things up. Who's in, who's out, and let's give this position a grade to put a bow on this show.
All right, roster projection, fairly obvious like we just said, but I'm going Kyle Duggar, Jaylen Hawkins, Marte Mapu, and Jabril Peppers in, Josh Bledsoe, Del Pettis out. I think if anything, maybe Bledsoe makes another push like he's done in the past, but I think they've also been through that before and realized that, hey, let's not burn the spot on him. He can come back on the practice squad. And realistically, if we keep him, it might be not a waste, but he hasn't played great when he's had the opportunity. So I think it's basic. It's those four guys: Duggar, Peppers, Mapu, and Jaylen Hawkins that make the roster. And for the grade, I'm giving them an A-. It's the highest one I've given so far. They're the best room on the team. I think Bill Belichick, you talk about he doesn't lie and he tells the truth. He told us last year, Peppers and Duggar are two of the best safeties in the game. I agree. Now, if you have Marte Mapu emerge, You have Jaylen Hawkins come in and play well. That's a really good room. There's not the drop-off there was last year where I feel like it was Duggar, Peppers, and a drop because there was a ton of unknowns. Now you have a solid room with some guys that can hopefully come in and fill out the room nicely. So I'm giving them an A-, and it's, spoiler alert, the highest grade I'll give a position room throughout the Patriots depth projection series.
Yeah, I think an A- is pretty fair here. I hate when we agree, but in all seriousness,
come on, give him an A. You're a little bit more optimistic.
No, A- only because Mapu is still an unknown. I believe in him fully. And you don't have the same reliable backups you had last season with Jalen Mills and Adrian Phillips. Like you could, I mean, Phillips did have a down season to be fair, but Jalen Mills was someone who came in and gave you very little drop off in terms of just being consistent and making mistakes. True. Now with Jabril Peppers, I thought he was a Pro Bowl caliber player last season. One, because he did make impact plays. He didn't screw up very often. And he even did things outside of his own coverage responsibilities and was just such an important piece of this defense and the reason they were so great against the run and why they didn't give up a lot of plays on the back end. Kyle Duggar needs to be better than he was last season, but another guy who every single offense is going to respect his presence. So those two alone, I give an A easily. Marte Mapu has so much talent. We saw him start to put it together late last season. If he can take off, then this is an A, maybe even A+, because you have three quality safeties on a defense where safety is a very important position, and they do affect the flow of the game. Jaylen Hawkins is kind of the only reason I want to make this a B+ a little bit, because sure, he's solid, but like I said, he's an okay last line of defense. But he did have some issues in that role as well, just in terms of the tackling, where, his angles weren't always great. Sometimes he could get out physical and just people were breaking his tackles. That does give me a little bit of pause. We can even throw Marcellus Dial in here, honestly, just, because we're so far off, we don't know what his role will be. But the Patriots, Gerard Mayo mentioned that he does have flexibility to play anywhere. So he could maybe factor into this if he makes the roster. If they decide we have so many cornerbacks, let's give him an opportunity to play a little bit of safety. Joshua Bledsoe, I agree. He's probably not going to make the team because he's had a hard time doing that in the past where we've seen him line up everywhere. He knows the defense. That is valuable in and of itself. But his skill set's limited. He's kind of a smaller, stockier guy, so he's not great in coverage. He's willing against the run, but his range isn't all that great either. So, and then Del Pettis, we really don't know what they have in him. So, I think A- is very fair for a position where the starting duo is one of the best in the NFL, and you've also got young talent that could potentially take a really big step up. Now, that's out of the way. Let the people know what position preview we've got coming up next.
Yep, we're going to do running backs. That will drop on Wednesday on CLNSmedia.com, and then we will hit on those guys on Press Pass here as well. And then Friday, we're going to round out the week with the Patriots specialists. So although we didn't talk about safety, quote-unquote safety, Brendan Schooler in this one, we'll hit on him in the specialist category. So make sure to keep those on. Keep your eyes out for those Wednesday and Friday on CLNSmedia.com.
Fantastic. And in case you missed it, we've already done our offensive line position preview, but I did get to sit down with Brandon Thorne, one of the foremost opinions when it comes to offensive line play. That is also on Patriots Press Pass. If you want reasons to get excited, especially about some of the younger guys and the veterans where you know what you're going to get out of them, and also understand where the Patriots really do need to cover up some holes, that is going to be a great resource. So check those out. And until we see you next time, take care of yourselves, take care of each other. We'll see you next time. Peace, y'all.